Okay, we're going to go ahead and start this information meeting. We're glad that all of you have been able to make it this afternoon. We're going to have a short presentation by our CAO shortly. Just a couple of housekeeping things. If you're going to ask a question, we ask you to come up to the mic, state your name, the ward that you're from, and your address, so that we know whereabouts you're from. There's going to be 2 people in the audience taking minutes, and I would assume these minutes will be available to the public after the meeting. So this time we'll just turn it over. Reed will be coming shortly. He was late getting home from a meeting this morning. So Dwayne, you're on.
Well, thanks everybody, and thanks to Debbie Campbell for the comments. This is a presentation that I gave to council for their consideration. And what I'm going to do is just go through it quickly, just to let you know in terms of what information council already has. And then, you may have questions about this information itself. So just in terms of the process, the township invited a proposal from the OPP to police the Wingham ward. The proposal was presented to council on September the 25th in this very room, and it was open to the public. The policing servicing analysis was then undertaken by staff, and we presented this presentation to council on October the 2nd. Council invited the OPP back to present the billing model in more detail, because as you'll see, that's a key piece. And here we are at a public information session for today. The staff, after there's 2 public information sessions, 3 to 5 today, and 7 to 9 this evening. So after we receive the public input, staff will then be putting together a report with all the information. So the information from this report, the information that we received from today, and we'll put that all together into a report and give it to council on February the 5th. Council will then have 4 to 6 weeks to make a decision regarding the proposal that has been presented by the OPP. Their decision, though, they need to make the decision before March the 25th of 2018. I'll maybe just also mention, we do have members of council present. So they're here we as staff will be taking notes as the deputy has indicated, but members of council are here as well to hear from you directly. So just going through this quickly, on September the 25th, the OPP presented the proposal to council. Through a service contract, the OPP would provide service to the Wingham ward, along with other municipal and provincial policing responsibilities under one administration. The proposal would be based on the level of policing services that are required to provide adequate and effective policing, as set out in Regulation 3 of 99. The proposal is based on a defined number of uniform and administrative personnel, which I'll get to later in the presentation. And the administration would be provided out of renovated OPP detachment office in Wingham, but eventually that would be moved to a new administrative office in Clinton. The proposal is a transitional contract, and it provides for basically 3+ years of an agreement. After the transition contract, the Wingham ward would enter into the OPP billing model, which uses a different cost recovery methodology than the transition contract, and I'll explain that a little bit more in a few minutes. So as indicated, at the October 2nd council meeting, council passed this motion basically directing staff to look at 3 different options. The first is in terms of accepting the OPP proposal of policing the Wingham ward. The other 2 they asked us to look at were maintaining the existing service and Third, to look at expanding the existing service to include the Blythe and East Wawanosh wards. So in their proposal, again, it's for 3+ years. The OPP have identified the policing staffing during that 3-year time period. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail, but as you'll see, essentially, the total staff complement would be 8.16, and you'll see the relevance of that in a minute. As you can see, this shows the OPP proposal during that 3-year time period, again, is 8.16 staff complement. Currently, the Wingham service has a staff complement of 8.0. So the two, during that 3-year time period, the staff complement would be the same. So moving on, this has been broken down looking at it in terms of a 1-year, a 5-year, and a 10-year. So in terms of the OPP costing details during year 1, the base cost that they have provided is $1.2 million and change. In addition to that, there are one-time capital startup and facility costs. So these are things like uniforms. There has to be some improvements made to the OPP detachment office here in Wingham to accommodate the additional staff. That's $206,000. During that 1 year, there is an adjustment that is made in terms of the uniform. So after the 1 year of that contract, there's a $12,000 adjustment that is basically adjusted towards our cost. The total cost for the first year would be approximately $1.4 million. In comparison, if you look at Wingham, for 2018, it's $1.24 million. We received some revenue in the form of $114,000. So during that year 1, the Wingham service is $1.1 million. The OPP would be $1.4. In addition to the service itself, should council decide that they want to accept the OPP proposal, there are some one-time extra costs that council will have to take into consideration. They're identified here. They include a severance for individuals who are currently on the force, the Wingham force. There would have to be a payout of bank time. There'd have to be the contract indicates possible benefits would need provided for up to 1 year. Termination, we have a dispatch agreement with Owen Sound, so we'd have to terminate that agreement, and there would be a payout on that agreement. Pension top-up is something that would need to be looked at. So just as I'll call it a ballpark, the one-time extra costs are looking at about $450,000, $480,000. The variation is depending on how much bank time we'd have to pay out during that time. So in terms of if you factor in, if council was to decide to accept the proposal and they were to start it, say in 2019 or end of 2018 into 2019, as I've indicated, for that first year it'd be $1.4 million as per the contract. And then as well, council needs to take into consideration the one-time exit costs. So during that first year, the cost to municipality would be $1.9 million. In comparison, if you look at Wingham, as the service currently exists, $1.1 million. Then we have capital and reserve of $40,000, and that capital and reserve, things like firearms, computers, and also we would need to make some changes or some improvements to the Wingham Police Station. So then, what we've done is we looked at it from during the entire 3-year contract period. So looking at it in 2019, 2020, and 2021. I'm not going to go into a lot of detail because that's not really what we're here in terms of getting into the details of numbers, but I can certainly discuss them with anybody that wants to. But as you can see, the Wingham service in 2019, if in terms of status quo, would be 1.1 million. In 2020, it would be 1.17. 2021 would be 1.195. And that's based on a 2% increase, inflation increase. In comparison, if you look at the OPP proposal, when you factor it all in, that first year would be 1.9 million, and that's everything. That's the cost for the contract, that's your capital improvements that would be required, that includes the adjustment that would be made during that first year, and it also incorporates some one-time exit costs. In the second year, that would drop to approximately 1.25, and in the third year, it would be 1.3. So after that third year, after the 3-year transitional contract, the municipality would then be moved into what we call the OPP billing model. And the OPP billing model is a provincially focused model and divides the majority of municipal policing into 2 categories. And the 2 categories are base service and calls for service. I won't go into what base service includes, but in terms of the current, this is a cost that is paid by, this figure here of 191.35. Right there. So the current base service cost per property is 191.35, and that's across the province. And that's based on per property basis. In Wingham, the Wingham ward has a property count of 1,561. So our base, or if we were to look at it in today's dollars, 2017 base service cost for Wingham would be approximately $300,000. So that's our base cost in year 4. In other words, after the transitional contract. Then we also have to factor in, as I said, there's 2 components, and the other component is calls for service. And there is a tool on the Ontario OPP Municipal Policing Bureau website that is available and that we used to determine or to get an idea in terms of what our call for service costs would be. What we determined is that based on data from 2013, 2014, and 2015, our calls for service cost, and this is an estimate only, would be about $446,000. Other things to consider are, under the billing model, there is the potential of some additional costs. Additional costs include things like overtime, court security, enhancements. So enhancements are things, for example, that if we decided, for example, as a municipality that we wanted to accept the OPP proposal, but we wanted to see more police, we wanted to have officers in the school, perhaps, more often, then, that is available to us, but we would need to pay for it. Prisoner transport, facility, and accommodations. Okay, I'm not going to go into any great detail at this point. I'm happy to speak to any of it, but so if you look at our base service cost in year 4, it's about $300,000. Calls for service is estimated about $446,000. So our subtotal there is $744,000. If you were to add in some additional overtime, and that's based on our existing police service, and then you take a potential revenue, in that year 4, we'd be looking about $800,000. So and I'll illustrate this a little bit better. So as you can see, so OPP service, Wingham service, and these are identified as savings. So as you can see in 2019, if you look at the 1.4 and the 1.1, there is no savings. In fact, in that first year, it would actually cost more. Similarly, if you go to the next year, 1.2, 1.1, it's going to cost us $115,000 more. Similar with year 3. Where we start to see savings, if council was to accept the OPP proposal, is in year 4. So as you can see, the OPP, based on the current billing model, comes in around $800,000. The Wingham service would still cost us, or would cost us $1.2 million. So in that year 4, our savings is $417,000. And then as you follow this through, and you continue on for, I did a 10-year time period, after a 10-year time period, this actually shows that if we were to accept the OPP model, we would have a savings of $2.1 million. As I said, there were 3 options that council asked us to look at. The third was expanding the Wingham service to include the Blythe and East Wallanosh wards. So as you can see, the OPP remains the staff complement 8.16. The Wingham Police Service 8.0. If we were to take the existing Wingham service and we were to expand it to include the Blythe and East Wallanosh wards, we would need additional staff, and we would need, our staff complement at that point would increase from 8.0 up to 2.4. So we require 2.5 additional staff if we were to expand that Wingham service to include the Blythe and East Wallanosh wards. In addition to staffing, we also would have some additional capital expenditures. We would need another cruiser, we would need firearms, we need additional outfits, uniforms for our officers, and we'd also need radio repeaters. So if we were to expand the Wingham service to police the Blythe and East Wallanosh ward, in addition to the staffing increase in costs, we would also require, as you can see, about $78,000 worth of capital improvements. Looking at it in terms of, similar as I did with the OPP and looking at the existing service, in terms of expanding the service, to expand the service, and when you incorporate our staffing increase, our staffing for the entire municipality would come up to $1.6 million. Then we have to add in capital, and this includes our one-time capital expenses that I've indicated earlier of $78,000, but we would also need to do some changes and some improvements to the existing building. So we budgeted, or we're estimating we would need to do about $40,000 worth of work. There is a revenue stream here of $115,000. We do have to confirm that if we were to expand the service. But this works out, as you can see, the total cost of $1.6 million in that year 1, should we decide to expand the Wingham service to include Blythe and East Wallanosh. So then, similar to what I did earlier, I looked at it 2019, 2020, 2021. I'm not going to go review this in great detail, but as you can see, in 2019, it would be 1.66 million, 1.601. And the reason for that slight decrease is because the one-time capital improvements that would be needed to the building, we would do them, they'd be done, so they fall out of the budget at that point. But we have put in some money here into the budget for capital improvements in terms of if you need a roof or any other improvements. And then when you apply the 2% increase, you're at 1.63. So this is just to give you an idea as far as how things are looking. Looking at it on a 10-year time period, you can see we would start out around 1.6, and when you factor in a 2% inflation rate, the total to provide policing to the entire municipality would be about 17 million, which would be averaging about 1.7 million a year. So in terms of looking at it in a 5-year, what I've done here is I've looked at it in a 5-year block. And if we were to accept the OPP proposal during that 5 years, our costs would be $5.6 million. If we were to maintain our existing service, it would be $5.9 million. If we were to expand the existing service to include the Blythe and East Wawanach wards, it would come out to about $8.2 million. So if you look at it on a yearly basis, in terms of dividing it over the 5 years, on average, it would cost $1.1 million, $1.198 million, $1.6 million. And it's important to emphasize that that figure of 1.1 does not include the $450,000 one-time exit cost. So in addition to that 1.1, there would be the additional one-time exit cost that we have to factor in. Then looked at it. I then took the cost per property and the 5-year average. On the basis Wingham has 1,561 property count. If we were to divide if we were to take that 5-year average and divide it out over the properties that we have in Wingham, the average property owner would pay about $727. If we maintain the Wingham service, it would work out to $768. If we were to expand the service and apply that cost equally across the entire municipality, so in other words, not area rated, it would work out to about $659 a property. Blythe and East Wawanach, in terms of, it's $332,000 is currently what we pay for policing right now for Blythe and East Wawanach. 948 properties, so it works out on average of $339 per property. If we were to expand it, the service, it would work out to the $659. 5-year average, 1.134, 1.198, and 1.654. And again, when looking at this OPP cost per property, it doesn't include that one-time exit cost. So that would be above and beyond this 1.9 during that 5-year time period. So this is the projected OPP cost per property. Oop. So the cost per property per year. So in the first year of 2019, the average property owner would be $932, then $823 in your second year, then $839 in your third year. But I think what's important to note is that when you hit this 4th year, which is when you would fall into the OPP billing model, the cost per property drops significantly to $514. So I think the point here is that in the first 3 years, if the proposal was accepted, there would be the Wingham residents would pay more for policing during that first 3 years. Once you get beyond the 3 years and you get into the OPP billing model, that's when you start to see the savings, and that's when you start to see decrease in terms of the amount that would be on taxation. So this is if we were to maintain the existing service. In 2019, on the basis of 1.1, per property would be $746, $749, $765, $781, $79, $796. So as you can see in this scenario, the cost per property will continue to rise during that 5-year time period. And if we were to expand the Wingham service to include the Blythe and East Wawanach wards, you can see the cost per property, and again, this is not area rated, this is simply across all properties in the municipality. $664, $638, $651, $664, and $678. So again, you're not, there's it's pretty, you're not seeing any fluctuations or any changes in that. If anything, it's increasing based on your inflation rate. So in considering as I've indicated or presented, there are the numbers that are there for consideration. But in making the decision, I think there's other things that council needs to think about and give consideration to. One is the future of the Wingham Police Facility if they were to decide to accept the proposal. What would happen to that building? What would happen to that facility? The ability to remain competitive and recruit personnel in terms of how attractive in terms of working. Future provincial requirements and standards. What we're noticing and seeing is that the province is coming down with additional requirements. And those requirements, as they apply to OPP, they equally apply to our local force. There's no guarantee that the OPP billing model will not change during that time period. I don't think there's anything more to comment on that, unless you folks may have some additional comments, but I'll leave it to that. And the OPP may impose, right now, there are services that the OPP do provide to the Wingham ward, and currently there's no cost for that. There's nothing to say that that won't change down the road. So my last point here is just something to be aware of is that the OPP, even though they're not currently charging for some services now that they're currently providing, that's not to say that down the road they might decide to impose costs for services that currently they're providing that we're not being billed for. So that's it from my end. I guess open the floor and for anybody that wants to make any questions or comments. Just we have Tim Poole here with the Wingham Police Service. Maybe you should thank you, Reeve Vincent, joining us. And we have Deputy Campbell up here with us. And I'll maybe let Jason Union, OPP Detachment Commander, Peter Marshall, Municipal Policing out of Aurelia, Collier Fuel, Municipal Policing, and we have
Sean Flattery, I'm from Career Development Bureau Review.
Great, thanks. So those are the folks that we have up here. We also have some other individuals in the audience. So if you have a question and no one up here is able to answer it, we do have other people here that may be able to answer your question. Sure. Sure.
Just one thing further, when you come up to ask a question, please say who you want to ask the question of. Whether it be Tim, whether the other fellows, don't ask me, but you can ask the Reeve. Okay, thank you.
Can you come to the microphones, please?
I think I can speak from here. You can hear me. My name is Mike Martin. I've got a lot of questions, but I'll start off with one for Tim on this presentation. One of the things you're looking at is, or you were asked to look at, was increased service with Light and East Wallanash. And you didn't indicate how they're being covered currently, what their policing was. You put a number in there of 300,000 in a ladder slide. Is that the current cost to provide this policing service for those communities? And how does that impact your analysis that you did on the cost for future if we absorb it?
Although you say that's a question for me, it's not.
Sorry, the gentleman made the presentation. I just think it was Jim. Sorry.
So currently, the Blythe and East Wallanosh wards, are currently receive the policing from OPP. That cost for policing for those 2 wards is $322,000. So when you look at 948 properties within those 2 wards, I forget the number off the top, but it's $300 and some dollars per property. So that's currently how the Blythe and East Wallanosh wards are currently being policed. Just in terms of point of clarification, what we're asked to do is look at expanding. So if we maintain the existing Wingham service, and let's say we were to get rid of the OPP arrangement that we have with Blythe and East Wallanosh, and we were to take the Wingham service and expand it to incorporate those. In other words, it would be, rather than just Wingham, it would be Wingham, Blythe, and East Wallanosh. Those are the numbers that you saw on the screen. It's in terms of expanding, taking the existing service and expanding it. Does that answer your?
So when you say expanding, you're adding 2.4 people and equipment to service.
That's right, correct.
I'm Brian Sharp from Oregon Park here in downtown. Yeah, this is all quite nice. I'm of the thought that as long as we have a local police department, we can control the police department, we can control the costs. My father used to say, those numbers up there down the road are pie in the sky. And we have no control over what the cost would be once these guys are gone. I've been around for a few years, and I know how these things go. Provincial police is pretty top heavy. Really think for a lot of people sitting in office. These guys know who the people are in town. They know what's going on in town. We know our constables would be here yearly on a regular basis, where the provincial police can bring people in, take them out, bring them in, put cadets in, do whatever they want. We have no control over that. That's my thoughts on this, gentlemen. Thank you very much. Martin again?
Yeah, and sorry, I meant to say, I live 234 Center Street in Wingham, so I don't know what word that is, but it's in Wingham. This is for anybody from the OPP group. Have you, has the OPP taken over a municipal or town police force in the past? And if they have done so, give me an analysis, please, of the risk to the community in terms of increased crime or increased risk to the residents of the community after the transition. So when the municipal police force disappears, the OPP take over. What is the change in criminal statistics in the 5 and 10 year period post the change? Do you have that information? And if you don't, how can I get it? Because to me, that's got to be one of the key bits of information I'd like to have before I consider going forward.
I can answer that as best as I can. When you're requesting statistics for criminal activity, that's going to differ from municipality to municipality to municipality. What I can say is that yes, we have we have other services or municipalities have disbanded their services in the past. The latest one being Sterling Rawdon, out from Eastern Ontario. They're just north of Belleville. They're actually going through they began last October, November. They're actually going through the 3+ year contract as it is right now. In regards to policing services it would be a matter of opinion as far as whether you like them or not. In regards to investigative-wise, that is where you reach out to your local detachment commander during council meetings to find out during his quarterly reports as to whether the statistics have grown or decreased. However, the way that we conduct our policing investigations are by far equal to any other police service across Ontario. Like, we're not here to compete against this service and that service. It's sort of an us and them.
That wasn't the intent
Yeah.
of my question. My question is, if the price is going down, that the implication is we're getting less cover.
No.
Otherwise the price would stay the same. As evidenced by the fact in the 3-year transition, you have the same numbers of folks within a few percent, and the cost is actually a little bit higher. So if the cost is going down, we're having less bums on seats here. To me, it implies greater opportunity for crimes that involve victims, not victimless crimes, but crimes that involve victims. Let greater opportunity for bad guys to come in and do their nefarious deeds. And I'm looking to you to not give you awful words and not make you feel good. I want information based on, yeah, we've done it in the past, and this is what happened. And that's what I'm looking for. So if you got it, please let me know. If you don't have it, just tell me you don't have it.
When you're looking at the cost going down, that's based on the current billing model we have in place. Well, the billing model was brought in 2015 to replace the past billing, where there was a varying degree of cost per property, of cost of policing essentially for each municipality. How it was looked at was that, well, we need to bring these costs into more of an average. So that is where the billing model was developed in between your base cost and your calls for service. The base cost, which is an average of $355 per property, is an average straight across the province of Ontario. So every municipality that the OPP polices receives that base cost of 191 in and around there, 193. The calls for service, this is where the municipality can actually get involved and with their local detachment, with their community, in which the OPP provides the services of targeting certain areas. If you have like a crime spree going on one neighborhood, and say an industrial area, a lot of B&Es, well, you focus on that area to bring that under control. But that all falls in with under your calls for service. So that's the other portion of the billing of where you can see the differences between this municipality or that municipality. So you could have the town of Wingham compare it to, say, the city of Aurelia, and you may see a difference in what the average price per property is, but that's going to be based on your calls for service. So that's where the members of the public can try to get involved in the community and trying to establish where these crime trends may be. But that's in cooperation with your local detachment commander as well.
You still not answering my question.
So I'm just going to add in there as well, Mr. Martin, correct? Mr. Martin, right now, what you will be receiving is what we call a 3-year plus contractual hours of service transition contract. This period, we are telling you that there are going to be 7.16 uniform FTEs, which is full-time equivalent.
8.1 was in the presentation.
No, the one is our detachment administrative clerk. We're talking just uniform. So the uniform is 7.16. One full-time equivalent officer is equivalent to 1,417 hours of service. That totals to approximately 10,145 hours of service you would be receiving per year over the transition contract. So where the price changes is you're going from an hours-based contract where we gather our data over the 3+ years to bring it to December 31st, and then you go into our billing model. Now in the billing model, what happens is the costs are allocated in 2 ways. We have our base service cost, which is $191.35, and then you have your calls for service. As Sergeant Marshall advised, calls for service is where you as a community can impact your cost. So in the beginning, when the price is high, it's because we're giving you contractual hours of service. We're billing you on those hours. Afterwards, it goes into base service and your calls for service. Historically, since the billing model has come in since 2015, we've been pretty much at the $355 provincial average mark right now. Our base service was $200.91 in 2015 when the billing model came in, and for 2018 it's estimated at $191.35. So you can see that we're seeing a gradual decrease there as well, but we're still hovering around the $355 mark provincially. So the price is high initially because of contractual hours, then it comes down to your calls for service.
Sir, I understood the presentation, I understood the numbers, none of them went over my head, it's all very clear. But at the end of the day, if I'm paying for a service, and I'm paying $1.6 million, that gives me 8.1 bumps on seats, whether they're in uniform or not. If I'm going to pay $600,000, I'm going to get probably about a third to 2/5 of those bumps on seats. Now, I don't care how you want to present it and slice it and come up with the numbers, you cannot provide the same amount of cover with less money. It just won't work.
No, sir, that's an incorrect
That applies
statement.
to me, and that comes back to my first question. It applies to me if I've got less bumps on seats, I've got less presence, the bad guys are going to think they've got a better opportunity, and what I want to know is, what are the statistics that say I'm right or I'm wrong? And based on you taking over service from previous communities. Because my guess is, if after the transition period, 5 to 10 years down the road, the incidence of crime involving victims, not victimless, but crime involving victims, has probably increased in those communities. Because what's keeping us relatively safe here is the fact that we have a very high, a very strong, a very visible presence in our community. It costs us a little bit more money, but we've got that here. And what I'm worried about, and I haven't heard you tell me differently, is that when we make the change, 5 years, 10 years from now, when, hey, we've got a little bit more money in our pockets, there's going to be another finger in there trying to get the money out of my pocket, and it's going to be a bad guy, not my counsel.
No, sir, what we're trying to clarify for you is, when you go into the billing model, and presently, you're working with the integrated service delivery model. So the numbers of 7.16 doesn't mean you're only going to have 7.16. If there's a requirement for more officers in your municipality to, if there's an incident that requires more manpower, let's say, we will have those members available for you. But where it goes down is you're not understanding is with the integrated service delivery model, there could be more members in your community as well. But
I understand the math, I can figure that out. What you're talking about is not prevention, you're talking about response to control situations that are getting bad. And then you're going to give us the people. Too late. Somebody, more than one perhaps, has already been hurt. So, anyway, I've said a lot.
Yvonne?
I'm just going to, Yvonne Carter, 264 South Street, Wingham. Not that nobody knows, anybody knows. But anyway, I think what the poor man is trying to say, simple, plain, it does the crime rate go up once we pay less for OPP?
So I just,
Never mind the numbers, just crime rate.
fair enough. So from a detachment commander perspective,
Yeah.
we currently have officers in Wingham, right? We have officers that
My
report.
neighbor is one, he's a fireman.
Perfect, you proved my point then. We have Wingham police officers in your area right now. If Wingham was to come over, the number of police officers that report to the Wingham detachment would increase. So, well, I'm telling you it would. Okay, but I'm telling you there would be more officers. If the proposal went forward, I'm telling you there would be more officers. That's a legitimate fact, that there would be more officers in Wingham. I would suggest to your point, sir,
You still didn't answer the question.
well, I'm going to finish and perhaps then you'll be satisfied with my response. There are municipalities in Huron County that have gone through this. So I would suggest when you talk about crime rates, I would reach out to places like Central Huron. So when the Clinton police service disbanded, then I think you can go and talk to them about their crime rate. You can talk to, probably the most recent would be the Goderich Police Service, when it was disbanded, and what experiences they went through. To speak to the point of our officers will all be gone, some of those officers still remain in Huron County, as police officers who were previous Clinton. I can tell you some of the municipalities that have disbanded are now OPP have seen a decrease in their calls for service as they relate to crime, as they relate to property crime, and various others. So in some respects, yes, the crime rate has been reduced, and you have now the availability of capacity to come over to the OPP if there is something that is an issue in the jurisdiction in which you live now. You now have access to over 80 police officers who police at the OPP to flood your area with increased police presence, with increased analysis, detectives, street crime units. So you will have, and I'm telling you that, you will have an increased police presence if you decide to, pardon me?
To pay extra for it.
Well, if you understand the costs going forward, then the cost slowly goes down. I think the year 4 was your mark where you saw that cost come down. Does that, I hope that helps with some of that and some research you might be able to do.
Well, I'm gonna ask our council to do the research. Surely that I would expect the council folks not to go forward on any proposal such as this without doing the due diligence checks with Goderich, with Clinton, with anybody else that's done. And thank you very much for that.
This question is to the OPP. Councilors, Reed Vincent, and the police board have repeatedly slammed the OPP regarding response times. If there was another break and enter at the Wingham Hospital, could the OPP beat the Wingham Police 2-day response time?
Sorry, I didn't hear your question. I'm sorry. What was the question?
It's about response times. If we switch to the OPP, is that microphone even working?
No, that's why I didn't get out there. It's not working.
If we switch to the OPP, the Reed in chambers many times and council has slammed the OPP in their response times.
Yes.
I want to know if we switch to the OPP, will the OPP be able to beat the Wingham Police's 2-day response time to a break and enter at the hospital? 2 days?
Yes.
You just weren't close enough to it, and maybe Steve.
I like to speak about it. Are the response times as bad as we've been led to believe by our council?
Sir, first of all, we're not here to compare ourselves to Wingham Police Service or what their response times would be. When it comes to response times, the organization, the Ontario Provincial Police, is continuously doing internal assessments. We're bringing in technology to whatever we can do to further make ourselves more efficient. All our vehicles are currently equipped with what we refer to as a mobile workstation. So they're basically mobile offices. Our officers are working out of those vehicles, patrolling in different parts of the community at all times. What goes with that technology is what we refer to as the fleet tracker, which our communication center has access to. So when a call for service comes in, our dispatcher doesn't look for just a zone vehicle, it looks for the closest vehicle to that incident. So in order to say that what would be the response time if I were to put it in minutes and seconds or whatnot, that wouldn't be, there would be no justice to that question. But because of the fleet tracker system, our dispatchers know exactly all the time where our vehicles are. So when an incident happens, what's the closest vehicle to the incident, that will get dispatched, plus the other units that are close enough will also go there to assist. So it doesn't necessarily have to be just a vehicle that's within the Wingham ward. It could be someone else that's from the ward next door. It's close enough, they may get dispatched to it before the Wingham vehicle actually goes there because it's close enough to that incident.
I think this was probably before council. If, as reference was made that the OPP station needs to be renovated and updated, if Wingham does not go to the OPP, who pays for it then?
Just so I'm clear, you're stating that the current Wingham Police Station,
No,
the OPP station,
reference was made that it needs updating and renovations. And my understanding from the presentation was that Wingham or North Area is responsible for those to pay that. So if we don't go, who pays for it then?
That I believe that would be an OPP cost.
I believe it should be now, even if we do take that step.
Just to answer that question, so the renovations are, part of the proposal was based on having the Wingham police officers coming over to the OPP. So in order for those FTEs or those bodies from the OPP, we would have to conduct renovations to the current OPP building located in Wingham. Should council choose not to go with the OPP and maintain Wingham Police Service, there are no renovations being conducted to that facility. And if there are our responsibility. It has nothing to do with the Wingham service itself or the town of Wingham. But these renovation costs are just based on having these FTEs or having these officers come over to the OPP, that we would have to do some small renovations to that facility to accommodate those extra personnel.
Okay. Currently, what services do the OPP provide to Wingham that we're not charged for?
Well, those services could be anything outside, like just specialized services. So you may require a canine dog and a handler. You may require some emergency response team members. You may require CIB investigative teams if you have a homicide or that sort of thing. Those services would come in and assist Wingham Police Service on the request of the chief himself. So we don't come in and just always, okay, well, here. So yeah, so if the chief requires some assistance, some specialized services that outside of their own service, well, then they will contact OPP. Could be helicopter as well. So those services are not being charged for. No.
As a concerned grandmother who has grandchildren going to both schools, it's a very busy area at certain times of the day. Wingham Police have always been very good to be there and make their presence known, and hopefully provide a much safer environment for the children. And I understand that that's in the contract, that you will be doing that too, but what happens when the 3-year contract is up? Is there any guarantee that that will continue?
So the level of service that you receive, and whether it's police visibility or our involvement in the schools, wouldn't change with respect to how you're billed. So in the 3-year transition.
I'm not worried about being billed. I'm worried about my grandchildren's safety.
And I am too. So we currently, as we deliver service, we have officers that work in the schools. We have officers that are directed on a daily basis during the school hours to be as visible as possible. And we're, of course, operationally necessary. So if there's chaos, of course, some things have to fall backwards. So as a proactive measure, and I can tell you right now, we have what we call focused patrols. So when we identify concerns in the community, and one of which we've identified last year, that into this year, the school year, is a higher police presence in our schools. And so between the critical hours at drop-off and pickup, we have officers to patrol and to make sure that we're visible, and we track those numbers. So at the end of the school year, at the end of last school year, we spent several hundred hours in that focused patrol, and we started it again in September of this year. And of course, I'll have those numbers when the school year is completed, so that it's still a commitment that we would have.
Just one final comment to council is that I have lived and owned a business in a small community that did not have in-town policing, and the crime rate is increased. Nobody can tell me it will be any different, because you hear people saying, don't go to Wingham if they've been doing or if they've been doing something else, because they're going to stop you. And I think
presentation, you mentioned that after the third year, there would be something moving to Clinton. I missed that. Is that just the administration folks? There's an OPP building here. What's moving to Clinton at the end of the 3 years?
So I can advise you that, I'm sure council knows, but there's been public announcements about the fact that through the OPP modernization project, that Huron County is slated to have a new OPP detachment built. That OPP detachment will be built in Clinton. It will centralize all of our resources. And if OPP took over this Wingham police area, yes, for the first couple of years until that building was built, we would have officers reporting to the Wingham OPP detachment, but we would be closing that building and everything would be centralized.
So to be clear, regardless of whether Wingham proceeds or doesn't proceed, in about 3 years' time, that OPP detachment building is going to close and you're going to be based out of Clinton.
I would say it's less than 3 years.
Less than 3 years.
Yes.
Okay. So in terms of, in fact, what I was talking about before, bumps on seats, if we go to OPP, there will be 0 bumps on seats in Wingham because the building will be closed. In order to get here, they got to be mobile.
They do have to be mobile, but we have strategies, right, to mitigate those types of things when we have staggered shifts, right? So there's an overlap. We have the capacity to provide overlap. Again, we have the ability to use technology in our mobile workstations to, again, I mean, if there's a problem in the morning at 4 o'clock or 5 o'clock in the morning and we use data to analyze that problem, then we put strategies in place to make sure, because the criminals have an idea, right, of when we work. I understand that, but we like to think we're a little bit smarter than the criminals sometimes, and we can provide strategies to mitigate that. And we have done that before, where we have officers who will start at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning if we have problems with stolen vehicles, and we know criminals know our schedules. We combat that. So it's not an all-out, but to be fair and honest to your question, yes, there's a new building coming, and it'll collapse several detachments that exist now in Huron County. It's an more efficient way and a more cost-efficient way of doing business.
I got a little story I'll tell you at the end about cost effectiveness and doing away with service. But I got a question for our Wingham guys, and I apologize to everybody else in the room if just tell me to shut up if I'm going too off on my feet too much. One of the good things about the OPP taking over is the technology issue, and there's no doubt that that is a big plus. So my question to Tim, my question to Tim is, how are you able to keep your force current, technologically speaking, and tap into the greater police resources in the province, including OPP and whatever?
We are part of a Ontario Police Information Technology Cooperative, which the OPP is also part of. They are the driving force for a lot of the technology, including the records management system that we use, our access to the CPIC, the Canadian Police Information Center. We pay into that every year to get the upgrades in technology. The one thing that we do not have that the OPP do is right now is the in-car computers, but that is feasible at about $5,000 a car.
Steve?
Chief Cool. Another major crime in Wingham Police heavily depend on the support and leadership from the OPP for their experience and expertise. If we already rely on the OPP, why should we continue to pay double for the Wingham Police Service?
I'm not 100% sure what you mean by paying double.
The average cost of the OPP.
But if I'll let you finish your question, would you mind letting me finish my answer, please? The OPP provide that service free of charge at the moment. We have officers, that every one of our officers are trained general investigative techniques, and one of our officers is trained in the major case management system. So what happens is, if we require assistance, when we did have a homicide, we were on the scene for several hours, and we ended up calling for assistance from the OPP. The OPP came in and helped with that investigation to successful charges. And that is the only time that I can recall that we actually did call the OPP for investigative assistance.
Next.
Good day, I'm George Dedell, I live in town here. I got highly respected for the OPP. They're a great bunch of guys. I love our police force. Tim, the chief, and his guys are fantastic. If we need them, they're not very far away. They're always around. I appreciate them. I like to keep our own force. Nothing against the OPP. They're a great bunch of guys, but I like our police force. Even if we have to expand on one car or an extra uniform officer to parole the other areas, that's fine. Our taxes could go on regardless. So I like to keep our own force. Like before you make any decisions on you guys make the final decision. The townspeople really don't have much of a say if you make up your minds. It's done with. And like the guys up here said, he's got a lot of information, and a lot of information he didn't get. But it'll probably come out to Washington in one way or another. But my personal practice, I like to keep it on course for ourselves. They're always around. They're always up and down the streets. If I go to the police station over here for any information, if there's nobody there, you pick up a phone, you got a police officer on the phone within a few minutes. I've gone to the OPP station down here. There's never anybody there. I pick up the phone, it rings. Nobody answers it. I asked the OPP officer to come to the house for something that our police cannot handle that's different. They never show up. So I like to keep our own police force. Our police force can go after the OPP if they need assistance. As Chief Gould said, he can get assistance anytime he wants. He's on the same wavelength as the OPP. So we just keep what we got. Why spend all the big bucks to transfer everything over when they're going to upgrade the OPP station in town here for, I don't know, $100,000, but then they're going to close it and move the plant. What's happened to that building? There's a few $100,000 down the drain. That's all I have to say. Thank you.
Bernie?
Bernie Bailey, Wingham. When I was on council, you guys know that I support the police 100%. I haven't changed my mind. I have a couple of things. Number one, Tim, when you put the pricing out for, and I'm a big fan of having Wingham Police do all of North Yard, it makes us a closer community. When you did the pricing out for the other two wards, is that for the same service as Wingham, or is that for the service level they're getting now from OPP? And the reason I ask is, as a counselor sitting on council, I've heard the two gentlemen up on the stage here and the other counselors complaining that they weren't happy with the service OPP was giving. Having said that, the OPP made it very clear there are 3 service levels, and we were paying for the cheapest one. If we want better service from them, then you pay for the second one. But we decided not to go with that and raise the taxes. So very clearly, those 2 areas are not getting the same level of service. You asked for the answer, please.
With the proposal that I was looking at years ago, is that we would put a second officer on duty all the time. And there would be one officer in Wingham, one officer in East Wallinash and Blythe. If there was a call that required 2 officers in either one of those locations, the second officer would leave where they are and go to assist. If it happened to be in Blythe, the officer would leave Wingham and go to Blythe to back up that other officer. That was the plan, and so it wouldn't be the same as what the OPP are providing. It'd be different. Maybe a little more, maybe a little less, depending on if there was calls in Wingham that required 2 officers. And that is the challenge that we face right now. When there is a call that requires 2 officers, we have to call someone in on overtime. Oh, excuse me, overtime to make that call.
Thank you very much. The other question I have is, we've been banting around this $450,000 to $480,000 that we have to pay out to all the different people in all the different places to close down the Wingham Police. We have to pay $200,000 to the OPP upfront. This is all upfront. Tim's not going to wait 18 months for his payout. So we have to pay $200,000 in the first year for the OPP to upgrade, which takes us to $700,000. Only the Wingham Ward people are going to pay for this because this is the Wingham Ward. I would be very doubtful if Blythe or East Wallinash are going to pay any of this, which means you're going to come up with a 40% tax increase next year on the Wingham Ward to pay for the $750,000. But nobody's going to want to do that. So I went down to the bank and I said, here, take $750,000 out over 10 years. How much would it cost? And it's $97,000 and change, which means the Wingham Ward immediately gets a 2%, no, actually get a 4% increase. If the entire town paid for it, it would end up at 2% based on $48,000 a percentage, which we all know. But because the Wingham Ward, 50% of the people that pay taxes are in it, that means we're going to immediately pay 4% increase on our taxes moving forward as of this year to pay down a 10-year loan to give the Wingham Police an OPP badge on the side of their shoulder and do the same job. So can one of the councilors tell me how they plan on paying for this $700,000, $800,000, 25% overrun boys, which is winning to $1 million? Tell me how you're going to pay for that without putting it up either 40% to pay for it right away or down the road.
Okay. The thing of it is, we're here, we're listening to our ratepayers, and when I'm not a Wingham Ward ratepayer, I'm going to listen to what the people from the Wingham Ward want us to do. That they are the ones that pay the bill in the end, and that I'm going to listen to them. And I believe a number of the rest of the councillors are looking at that to hear what the Wingham ratepayers tell them that they want done in this situation. And we want the Wingham ratepayers to make the decision.
Thanks, Neil. I would just leave you with one last question for you, one of you gentlemen. Because the Wingham Ward alone pays for this, and East Wallinash and Blythe have never wanted the Wingham Police because of financing. But as I explained, it's only because if you have proper policing, you have to pay for proper time. You guys have discussed that many times. You've been around this a long time. So because the Wingham Ward are the only ones paying for this, should it not be the mayor, or the revisory, and the 2 Wingham councillors make that decision because it's their ratepayers that are affected?
Well, that I could say, yes, that would be a plausible way, but I believe that it goes back through the Municipal Act that asks for the council of the municipality to make the decision.
Thank you very kindly, gentlemen.
Thank you. Mr. Martin again.
Yeah, question for 450, someone was just talking, front of my head. The 450 to 480,000 we have to pay out, you said it has to be paid out. It strikes me that a lot of things we're talking about that are included in that are monies that should have been put aside to cover pensions and other payments that we know you're going to have to pay. So why is the money already sitting in the pot somewhere? Have you not been collecting it, or have you collected it and spent it on something else?
So just from my perspective, I've been here for 5 months. So just in terms of, I can't speak to the historical, but I think Deputy Campbell maybe has some comments.
Yeah, but if you look at the books in that 5 months, surely the money ought to be there or not be there, one or the other. I mean, how are you managing the business?
Right now, we're in budget, and we're having difficult meeting what we need now. And so, over the last 5 years, we have not been able to put very much money into reserves, because we have infrastructure that has to be fixed, and we have not been getting our provincial grants that I feel we are entitled to, but because we live in southwestern Ontario and we didn't vote right in the last provincial election, we have been neglected. But I'll tell you, if you really want to see how it's done, you come to a budget meeting.
Love to. Tell me when.
February the 8th at 6 p.m. at the township office.
Thanks, I'll be there.
But that's kind of where we're at, because we have infrastructure that needs to be done 10 years ago, and we haven't got grants.
Another question, unrelated. How was the police force set up in Wingham? Was it an act of a motion in council? Was it a referendum? What was the mechanism by which the police force was instituted in Wingham? And I guess the corollary question is, does it, however it was set up, does that imply the mechanism by which it has to be disbanded or done away with?
The Police Services Act directs that every municipality is responsible for its own policing. So the municipality has to make a decision on which way they're going to do that. They can do it by standing up their own police service, contract with the OPP, or contract with another municipal police service that adjoins their territory. In 1879, when this municipality was initially incorporated as the town of Wingham, that's when the Wingham Police was stood up with one chief constable at the time. From that time forward, it's gone from 1 to 3 to 5, and now to our current 7 officers. The OPP didn't come into existence until 1909. So there was no choice at the time except to go with your own municipal police service. That's how we started.
So there's no legacy in that decision, initial decision, that says that we have to have a referendum or we have to do some other mechanism?
No, there's not. It's simply in the Police Act, and the municipality has to make a decision on which way they want to do it, and they can change that course at any time.
So now a question for the Reed. When you say you're going to let the Wingham Ward folks make the decision, how are you going to do that?
Hoping a few more of them tell me exactly what they want after looking at the information available. I have had a good number of people from the Wingham Ward tell me which choice they want to see made.
Sounds like a squeaky wheel situation. Okay.
Yeah, a certain amount. But in municipal politics, those people that you know, and they talk, and they say, this is the best choice for our situation. And I'm not going to say, not being a resident in Wingham, I'm not going to say I'm going to impose, well, I know better than people who live in Wingham. No, I'm going to ask the ones that live in Wingham to tell their council members what they want.
hours for the Wingham, or for the Wingham Police. I've seen the cruiser twice this month from OUP, twice. He was speeding down the main street. Obviously, there was an emergency somewhere else. My concern is if we take away our Wingham Police, who know our citizens, who know how we stand, okay, when it comes to our community, what is going to happen to us then? When we have strangers come into our homes, like say, for instance, and this is just for say, we have a senior that passes on. What happens in that incident? Tim, you know me. Do you know me? Do you know who I represent? We're having strangers come into my home. I have a senior lady that's not well in my home. What's going to happen with that? Well, part of police servicing and community servicing is knowing your police officers and knowing what card they're going to give to us. The other thing is, I agree with you. The Liberals have taken away so much from each community. Can we not work this out that we keep our Wingham Police?
I can give you a brief comment to your concerns, and I completely understand wanting to know the people that are in your neighborhood. As part of the 3+ year contract, we don't remove any officers from the community. So we don't come in, like the OPP, should they choose, the municipality choose to come to the OPP, we don't come in and say, okay, officers for Wingham Police Service, you're done, see you later, move on. Each officer is entitled to apply to the OPP, proceed through that process of the application, and upon success, they're not removed from their community, they're still here in the community. So essentially, the officers you see today, should you choose to come, the municipality choose to come to OPP, are the officers you'll see tomorrow, unless those officers choose to move to a different part of the province. That's their own choice. We don't force them to go anywhere. Or should they choose to proceed down another, say another specialized unit, another specialized bureau, that sort of thing. But for the first 3+ years, we don't move any officers anywhere. They still maintain their community as well. So they are the officers you will see, should they choose to stay within their community.
What happens after 3 years?
If they wish to stay within the Huron detachment, they're still within the Huron detachment. Yeah. We don't force a person out of the community just to do it, so to speak, right? There'd have to be reasons why you remove that officer from that community.
I just wanted to add to that comment. So the OPP officers that report to the Wingham detachment now, a fair amount of those officers live in your community now. Their children go to your schools. They participate in various activities in this community. And so they know the residents of Wingham. It is our expectation that even if a new officer comes into the area, that they make the effort to get to know the community, because we feel that's important, and it's obviously very important to you. But to bring that point home too is we have no plans of unless it's officer initiated. Even the Wingham police officers that successfully came over to the OPP, it would be initiated by them if they chose to leave the area. So there is no intent here of displacing any police officers from your community.
Thank you.
Okay, so no more questions. So it's time for that story that I told you about earlier. And it's a little bit relevant. I'm an engineer, and I provided service through my company to another company that was in the manufacturing business. And they got a new management team, and the management team came in and looked at where they could save money and reduce costs. And so one of their guys looked through their payroll and saw on payroll and who all the folks were, and they tried to make sure that the department managers rationalized all the people in there. There was one guy called an oiler. Now, in an oiler, we don't usually have these positions anymore, but in the old days, the oiler was a guy walking through the factory with a push cart, full of oil and rags, and he would top up the oil on pumps and motors and make sure that they were all working properly. And the guy that was in that job was, and this is a true story, so I'm not making this up. The guy that was in that job was in his early 60s. He'd been at the factory for his whole career, and was coming up close to retirement. So the guy said, "Look, just retirement. You know, he's coming up to retirement. We don't really want that oil position. Get rid of him, put him up retirement, and we won't fill the position. We'll save that position." And so it was done. Within the next 3 to 6 months, the guys that were doing all of the books and looking at how the business was going started to notice that they were having a lot of equipment failures, a lot of breakdowns, a lot of lost production due to outages of equipment. And they couldn't figure it out. And what has changed? Something has to have changed to have us in this situation. And so the engineering guys looked at it, and the maintenance guys looked at it, and finally, the only thing that they could link it to was the fact that they let the oil, it started to occur after they let the oil go. And so why is that an issue? Why, you know, we're still oiling machines, we still have the automatic oilers, we're still putting oil in there, and greasing the machines, why the oil? And it turns out that somebody said, well, let's look at what the oiler actually did. Not only did he go around and oil all the equipment, but when he was walking through the plant, he was feeling the motors, he was touching the pumps, he was gauging the condition, and he'd been there so long, he knew the factory knew the machine, and if he saw something wrong, he'd just go and tell his maintenance buddy what was wrong, or something, an incipient problem, get it fixed before it failed. He's gone, all of that knowledge and all of that day-to-day care of the equipment disappeared with him. And to be honest with you, and so then they had all the breakdowns, and they had to come up with a whole lot of new strategies to overcome the failures and compensate for the fact that this guy is no longer walking through the plant. And I see us in a similar situation. I see the Oilers, our Wingham police force, they're walking around, they know the community, they're there, they're visible, and I see the OPP as a new management coming in, or the council is the new management guys, and I'm afraid that there could be a spike in equipment failures. In our case, it would be victim crimes. And I have no doubt that the OPP would respond effectively, and would get things under control. I just don't want me or my neighbors to be the ones that suffer as in the interim while we're waiting for that peak to be brought under control. I've said my piece.
You asked?
Go ahead.
Pardon?
Go ahead.
You asked what the Wingham people feel. As a Wingham person, I am very proud of our police department. I think they do a very effective, kind, thorough job. I think working out of Wingham as opposed to working out of Clinton only makes sense that we're better covered out of Wingham. My hope and wish is to keep the Wingham town police. I think they're the most effective and the right people for the job.
Steve?
This one's for Chief Poole. The OPP regularly send out press releases offering scam recognition and prevention tips. They also offer education seminars regarding drugs, winter driving tips, child car seat limits, and even Project Lifesaver. What has the Wingham Police done to keep the public informed and therefore safer?
The Wingham Police does issue media releases to bona fide media outlets such as the North Huron Citizen, CTV, CKNX, and several other outlets. Most recently, with regard to fraud, scams, etc., I personally conducted a presentation to a seniors group here in Wingham last week, and we do presentations at the schools, participate in the drug seminar that was conducted at Medill last year. We are as active. We don't have the budget for the multimedia that is put out by the OPP, but we kind of ride on their shirt tails quite a bit. You've indicated that you heard their presentations, their advertising, so it does work. It's the same for their role as it is for ours to conduct policing in the area.
Bigger isn't better. We've seen this in education, where they've concentrated school boards in areas out of our area. At one time, we were in a partnership with the hospital in Stratford. That didn't work out because Stratford wanted to control everything. Now we're in a partnership with Liverpool, and it works pretty well. We're about the same size. Our local council has a police services board, and they can express their wishes directly to the police. If we go with OPP, it'll be the OPP telling our council what they will do, not necessarily what they want. So I think we should keep our local policemen as they are. Thank you.
Reed Benson, I'd like to comment on that. Just to the gentleman's statement there. In regards to having a police service board, sir, if the municipality were to amalgamate with the Ontario Provincial Police, you would continue to have your police service board in place. Even during the transition contract, you would have your police service board, you'd have your police service board that would work with our detachment commander and can prioritize, can also advise where they would like to see certain patrols, or if there's any parts of the community that they would like heightened patrols in. So, for your statement that the OPP will tell you how things are done, that is an incorrect statement. Your police service board you currently have with the municipal police service, you would continue to have a police service board should you amalgamate with the Ontario Provincial Police. To that angle, I'm also going to clarify a statement that was made earlier by a gentleman here as well. It was in regards to having a tier system of service delivery that the neighboring municipalities were possibly receiving the lowest end of policing, and then if they wanted something more, they had to upgrade. Again, that is an incorrect statement. We at the Ontario Provincial Police do not have a tier system for policing services. Everyone across the board receives the same police service. We work on an integrated service delivery model where if the need is required, more officers are brought in should the incident require that. On top of that, when we talk about enhancements, after the transition contract, when you enter the billing model, you will have the opportunity to enter into either a contract or a non-contract policing agreement with the OPP. Should you go Section 10 contract, one of the provisions is you can have an enhanced service availability, which is an enhancement for an officer. That officer has to have a specific purpose as to why you would like to hire an additional officer. It would have to go through a magnitude of different structures within our organization to be able to satisfy the need for such an officer. For example, Spectre Union currently has a school resource officer in Huron County. They do go to the various schools, they do presentations, they're present, they're interacting with students and their parents. The same arrangement would continue here in Wingham Ward as well. Now, if the municipality decided that, you know what, we want a officer in our schools at all times. We don't want him doing routine patrol, we don't want him answering calls for service, we want him dedicated to schools. That dedication is referred to as an enhanced officer. There again is no tier service delivery in the OPP. We do not do silver, gold, platinum. We have one way of policing. It's across the board. Anything extra would be an enhanced officer position that the municipality would have to first satisfy us that why you need this officer, what is the specific purpose, and then only it would be billed to you. So again, first, yes, the police service board will continue. To the other gentleman's inquiry earlier, you do not receive any low-end service anywhere. And the third one was in regards to receiving specialized services from the Ontario Provincial Police. We have a wonderful relationship with the Wingham Police Service right now, as we do with other municipal police services. We do provide certain specialties when required, whether they could be in the form of a helicopter, they could be in the form of our K-9 units, and our CIBR detectives' offices. Currently, we do not charge for those services. That doesn't mean the legislation does not exist where we can't charge. The legislation exists, it's just that our commissioner has decided we are not going to be charging municipalities for that. So, could that change in the future? It may or may not change. I just want to make sure that it's clear out there. We're not trying to put out any notion that's not there. Yeah, and that will change for everybody. It wouldn't be just for Wingham, or it would be for any other municipal service requiring OPP assistance. Again, we do monitor our assistance to different municipalities, but that's only for statistical purposes within our organization, as well as for example, Inspector Yunin to know when his officers are responding or assisting in Wingham. Thank you.
Yvonne?
So, just as a clarification of terminology, enhanced just means an extra price. So rather than saying layered, we're saying that you've got a base service, and if you want more, it's enhanced, whereby you pay more, which is another level.
No, again, that's, I don't agree with that. What we mean by an enhancement, ma'am, again, what I mean by an enhancement is, it has to be an officer for a specific purpose. It doesn't mean that all of a sudden you'll receive 4 new cars in your area, there'll be more officers on the road. It's for specific purposes as school resource officer. We have one currently that goes through all our schools. If you were not satisfied with their services and wanted one there full-time as per his shift just to be here to provide school resource information or education, that would be an enhanced officer position. Again, you would have to let us know the municipality would be willing to pay for that additional officer. It would go through our command structure at region, and it would, the need would have to be satisfied in order to bring on another officer. So it's not a different tier. There's a difference between tiers of service.
But everything is a base service. What we're getting now, we're getting the whole package and it's a price. You get paid, we pay for so much, and anything beyond that, each individual thing is charged extra beyond that. It's like having a cake, and for every candle you pay extra.
No, I think there seems to be a communication issue with what I'm saying. What I'm saying is, you're still receiving the services. If you were to amalgamate over to the OPP, you would receive the services of Huron County Detachment right now. All the different programs they have in place, all the different resource officers they currently have, when operationally feasible, they would be coming to your community as well and speaking with your students and all that. What I'm saying is, if there was a particular need, and if there's any other municipality in Huron County as well, if they ever felt, you know what, we have one school, one high school, we want to have a dedicated officer for this, that would be someone that would be dedicated to those schools for that purpose. So this would be no different. You would still receive the services of our school resource officer here in Wingham, but it's not that he would be there every shift full day. He would come there as per his rotation, how he goes to the other schools as well. So we're not taking anything away. You might be receiving certain other aspects with whatever we have currently in Huron County.
This is for the town, okay? Could we not have a vote whether we want OPP to come in? Or not even a referendum. How about you send out a little note on a piece of paper to all the taxpayers in Wingham and surrounding areas that are going to be involved in this? Do they want to keep our Wingham services, or would they like to go to OPP?
There's the very big opportunity that everybody in the Wingham ward that wants to could drop a note off at town hall, and it would be noted. It would be looked at by council as to what their decision would be. Archie, did you have a question?
First of all, looking at the numbers, I think I'd say from my perspective, I live at 473 Greggy Road in Wingham. I have a great deal of respect for all the police officers sitting at the table, and I want to thank you for your service, but I'll keep my Wingham Police Service. Thank you very much. do that for a number of reasons. One, I don't think the prices that have shown that there's going to be a great cost saving. I think outside of the 3 to 4 year mark or crystal ball it. And I have some experience with police costings over my history, and they rarely go down. And I know that several municipalities got stung at one point because they gave up their municipal force, and costs did go up. And unfortunately, once you give up your municipal force, you cannot go back without a tremendous cost. And I think a lot of municipalities have made this decision, and maybe we're quite happy. Other municipalities have made this decision and are not so much happy. And I know that Chief Poole has even had some municipalities come to the Wingham Forest and look at them and say if there was, look to see if there was a way to reestablish their municipal force. I think we have a great level of service from both the Wingham Police, and when we've needed over the course of history, we've been able to always call on the OPP to come in to assist. I think that keeping the Wingham Police Force as well as continuing that relationship is the best of both worlds, and I don't see any reason to change that. Yes, we will be able to keep our Police Services Board. I was fortunate enough to serve on the Wingham Police Services Board. One thing you will not get is the ability to do any collective agreement bargaining anymore in the future. That will be handled by the province now. So that control will be gone. Our force, I don't know if it's still the case, is one of the lowest paid in the province, and they do that because our guys are dedicated and they care about the community, and they know it's a small force. So they have always been good to work with the board to maintain and keep costs under control as best they could, and so is Chief Poole. I don't see the sense in dumping $206,000 into the OPP station to renovate it in order to blow it away 2 years later because they're opening a regionalized. That makes no financial sense to me whatsoever. You look at the costs in addition for paying pensions and all those statutory obligations that you have to when you sever those employments, and it does not make any sense. And we can say that the calls for service is going to go down, but in my experience, both in fire departments and police, calls for service are very cyclical, and that can change. That can change year to year. You can have tremendous spikes, and I know some municipalities in the past in the county, when they did disband, there was a reassessment of their calls for service. The price did go up. Not all of them, but some of them. So as a ratepayer, and I'm going to come tonight because I'm hoping to speak to and pass that message along to more of the councillors, particularly the Wingham councillors who couldn't be here this afternoon, that is, I'm firm in that my opinion is we keep the Wingham Force. I think it's the best bang for the buck. Continue our relationship with the OPP, which I think is a very strong one. And I just want to make sure that hopefully this council will listen to ratepayers, because I'm hearing a lot of comments pro Wingham Police and keeping them, so thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's Peter. Sir, just a comment on, I know you had mentioned about $200,000 in renovations to the local OPP detachment here, or satellite office. Just to clarify, the actual estimated detachment modifications is only $14,050 utilized for that. The other costs are built into uniform, firearms, etc. So those are one-time costs that the municipality would pay for, but maintained throughout the course of the career of the officer. Well, it's $14,000 that will accommodate those members into that detachment area. So it's not a waste of money. It's the cost that would incur to upgrade that building to accommodate those officers. Things such as gun lockers, you'd set them up with if there's any additional electronic equipment they require, office administrative equipment, etc.
The breakdown of the 206,000 one-time startup cost is also available on the Wingham Ward North here on the website as well. This was a part of our initial presentation we had given to you on the 25th of September. All the costs were broken down in there. So 206, when there's some mixed notions about that, it's just building renovations. It's not building renovations. We're not looking to put in a new roof or a new room. It's 14,000 would be simple things such as gun lockers, cubby slots for their notebooks, just stuff to accommodate them because they would need lockers when they come there. The total breakdown I would suggest is that you go back to the North Huron website. It is there, the presentation is there, the complete breakdown is there as well, because this also involves a $30,000 investment for a beat tower, which we refer to as a communications tower, where officers can do foot patrols, they can be out of their vehicles and still maintain communications, which is an essential lifeline for officers. There's also expenses for new vehicles, Alcatel. There's various different breakdowns there. I would strongly suggest that you go to the website, have a look at that presentation. You will see it there as to what makes up that $206,000 figure.
Kim?
I still say, in the end, if the OPP takes over, local people will have less control than what they have now. Our money talks, and the powers in charge of the OPP have more power than our local police services board.
Is there any more questions for this session? Basically, I want to say on behalf of council and staff, thank you very much for attending and your participation in the discussion. And for those that are coming back in a couple hours, hopefully we'll have another good representation from the Wingham ward, and it'll definitely help council make the decisions.